Okay, I want you to tell me who you are, and then I want you to tell me that. So say it again. I wasn't recording. Okay, please again.
I am Eileen McLaughlin Stiles, wife of Howard Stiles, class of '59. And I had a mother and father that grew up on Tremont Avenue in the Bronx. And I had an Aunt Ronnie, whose name was Veronica McLaughlin, who dated Garth Davison. And she went to her grave still talking about that date.
Oh my God! So where was the date? Was it in high school or was it in college? Was it at West Point?
I have no idea. But when you mentioned the Bronx, I put the two and two together because I couldn't never figure out how she would know Garth Davison.
Veronica McLaughlin. So my mother's name was Veronica.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's a small world. That's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yep. Well, she just bragged about that, and when I married a West Pointer, everybody knew about her date with Garth Davison.
So do we know who she married?
I do. She married Dick Warren and had 4 children, and which are my cousins.
Okay.
And of that, only 2 are still alive. And I am now my brother, who was the first grandchild, McLaughlin, Thomas J., deceased 2 years ago, so I'm the firstborn of the McLaughlin clan. And we had a reunion in 2006, and 40 people came, and 40 people could not come.
Wow.
Big Irish family with 3 sons and 4 daughters. And they moved from the Bronx to New Rochelle, where Thomas Patrick McLaughlin was a Democrat and became the postmaster in New Rochelle, New York.
Well, if you know or can find out anything more about that, I would love to know that.
Well, I will ask my cousin, the daughter, Jenny, to see if she knows it.
Well, if you can, I'm going to give you my email address and phone number, and if there's any follow-up, I would love to know.
Okay.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
When I put the connection together when you say, where Dad grew up in the Bronx, I thought, that must be where Aunt Ronnie, met him.
Well, he went to
Upper Bronx, and he gave or sold his farm to the city of New York to put in the 3rd Avenue elevated train, where all the trains came back at night and were stored on that old farm.
Oh my goodness. And that farm was where?
In the Upper Bronx.
In the Bronx.
Yeah, and I don't know what, street that was on.
Right.
But his name was Owen Grogan.
Well, I think they were at 196th Street is the number that always sticks in my head.
Yeah. I've got the address on Tremont Avenue for my dad's family. And today they were plumbers, and today there is a plumbing company where the original house stood. And my mother's apartment, Upper Tremont, across from I think it's St. Raymond's Church, is still there.
Wow.
And the old brownstone.
I'm going to have to go up there and see that.
It's all Latino now.
How bad?
And Mom used to talk about seeing the Christie Minstrels perform in the street.
Really?
Around the corner at the theater. And it was an integrated neighborhood, and when my grandfather died very young, leaving my 28-year-old grandmother to raise 4 daughters alone.
Wow.
And the German neighbor, my mother was the twin, the last of the 4 children, and Aunt Grace. And the German neighbor said, take the exam for the city of New York so that you will get some income. And she passed it. And she wound up getting a pension in her old age, and her job was giving out bath towels in the city of New York. Baths.
My goodness, that's a wonderful story.
And her husband died, he had a horse-drawn plumbing cart in New York City, and the wheel fell off and broke his leg.
Oh my God.
Died of pneumonia.
Oh my God.
Yeah, leaving her at 28 with 4 kids. Right?
Oh my goodness.
But the neighborhood all pitched in. My mother said they were called the twins rather than by their name. And the German lady would say, "I finished bathing my daughter. Send the twins up. The water's still hot," to bathe them.
Oh my goodness.
Real community.
Have you ever written this up?
No, I haven't.
You should write that up.
Yeah. My mother, I went down to get her. She was living alone to 91 in Florida. My dad died at 68, and she lived alone till 91. And then she got eye problems, and she had like a 54 Chevy with 25,000 miles on it in 1989 when she died.
Wow.
And she went to the laundry and to church. And so my brother was a very different personality than mine, and both he and his wife were kind of obsessive compulsive people. And she said, "Well, I can't take the Maine winters where we live now, but I'll go to your brother's for the winter." And I was working at a school system, and so I said, "Well, I'll come get you when the year's finished." And I drove her north, and we stopped we used to summer in the Berkshires because of the polio era. My father got us out of the city.
Wow.
We were in Bronxville area on the younger side. And I recorded some history on that trip on a tape recorder.
I recommend that.
And
You still got that somewhere?
I do. And she passed away at our home in Maine because of Hugo. Hurricane came through and took the roof off my brother's house.
Oh my goodness.
So she stayed till October. And on the 5th of October, she had a massive heart attack. But we had more fun, and she and my husband tested every ice cream place in Maine near us. And it was a wonderful life that she had. And we just feel blessed.
Well, that's wonderful. You should write that all up. That's an amazing story.
I have an even funnier story. Small town Raymond. I knew the undertaker in the local funeral home, very rural. And I called that my mother had passed, and Lauren Hall came down, and he's driving down with a friend. And the friend says, "Where are we going?" And said, "To the Stiles house." And he went, "Oh no," and no, it's Eileen's mother. So I opened the door in my pajamas and bathrobe at 6:30 in the morning in a rural Maine, and this fella that we were close to says, "You look like a lady that needs a hug." And I thought, do I love living in rural Maine or what, where you know the local undertaker and his partner?
That's wonderful. Oh,
And
God bless you.
It gets even funnier because Lauren said, I said the family plot is near Mount Kisco in New York for my grandfather and relatives. So he said, well, I won't ship bodies to JFK Airport because they lose them.
Wow.
My brother lives in South Carolina near Charleston. So I said, well, what are our choices? He said, well, you could drive her down. So this friend Lonnie that came with him to pick up my mom, we swapped our van for his truck so Mom would fit in the back
Oh my gosh.
with her coffin.
Wow.
And we take off on a Friday, and I start driving, and I don't know this truck very well. And lo and behold, I put on the brakes the first time, and of course it jerked. And our 16-year-old son is in the back seat, and my sense of humor husband says, hang on, Lucy, my mother, you know, your daughter's driving.
Wow. Well, That's great.
By the time we got to New York at 10 o'clock at night, we had all kinds of things like they should put seatbelts in coffins, and the humor just went on. And
Right.
Lucy, probably had quite a trip. We get to the undertaker, and he is very solemn in New York, and he said, "Would you like to see your mother?" And all three of us burst out laughing because we had this picture of her in the bottom of the coffin
Right.
in a fetal position,
Oh my gosh.
and we had to explain ourselves.
Wow. That's amazing history. 5 days, this will become the new graduating class, the last graduating class. You know how many members are graduating?
It's usually around 900, but I don't know the exact number this year.
It's amazing. So my dad was the class of 27. He was football player,
All right.
football coach, one of the winningest coaches in the history of the academy. Then he was patents engineer in the invasion of North Africa, the invasion of Sicily, the invasion of southern France. Presided over the first war crimes trials, and then came home from 4 years during World War II. Went to Korea when we were about to be pushed into the ocean down in the foothold of Korea. Built the Davidson Line at the instance of General MacArthur, and led a breakout that captured 2,000 of the enemy and took the 24th Division all the way to the Yalu River. Then came back and became superintendent 56 to 60. Changed the curriculum for the first time in the history of West Point. And then went to Europe when we thought we were about to meet the Russians coming across the European plain. So he had his share of war. So I'm back videoing the reunion of this class. I'm not a West Pointer myself, so I came back with the class of 59 and just trying to do this for them. So have they gone through this more than once now, or is this just once around?
So this particular portion of the rehearsal, this is the only time they've done it today, and I don't think they'll do it again. This is a simulation of when they actually get their diplomas.
Got
They've
it.
done the ceremonial stuff that happens prior to this. They've done a couple of times already today.
Who's speaking?
I'm not sure if that's common knowledge yet, so I'm not sure if I'm actually allowed to say.
Can't tell me?
Yeah.
Can't tell me? So is Trump in the running? President Trump? That's all right. You don't have to say. That's okay. How many women?
So I'm
More or
not
less?
sure exactly how many women. I do know that this year has the largest. It already made it. I think it was on CNN, but it's the largest group of African American females to ever graduate.
Awesome.
There's, I think, almost 40, which is fantastic.
Awesome.
Yep. And I think the Corps in general is about between 20 and 25% females. So,
I'm done.
so there's going to be a couple hundred.
That's great.
Yes. Yep.
I think I saw a picture of those 40 gals somewhere through.
Yeah, it just came out just a few days ago, maybe last week.
Well, these are the heroes of our country. Are you a West Pointer?
I am not, sir.
Well, I'm sorry for you and I'm sorry for me. I wish I had been. I decided not to follow my father and just to go my own way. So now I'm trying to figure out a way to pay my dues to the country. These people are already doing it. A lot of pretty big guys.
Huh?
You know, in the old days, they lined them up by height.
Well, usually. I don't think currently they're actually in the order they're going to be in on Friday.
Really?
Yeah. I think right now they're just showing them the process.
All right, cadets, I will tell you this. This is the tedious part. It's where it gets very long at. All right, so I do ask you, I'm asking now, and I'll ask you on Friday, but on Saturday I can't do anything about it once the ceremony starts. Be respectful of your fellow classmen. All right, once you have your diploma and you are back in the seats and you are sitting there with your diploma in your hand, be respectful of those that are behind you that still have not received theirs. And just keep the noise down and just be respectful of your fellow classmen.
Now, did they return the hats, do you know, or did they just toss the hats and let them go?
So at the very end, yeah, they will just throw their hats in the air and they're gone. Like they have a part of the actual ceremony on Saturdays, they will let young kids come out and collect them.
Right.
And the cadets put money in them sometimes and pictures, you know.
Right.
So the kids find a little treasure inside the hat.
That's great.
Yeah, the hat toss is the very last thing. The benediction will happen. What else is right before that? There'll be commission. They'll take the oath of office, all that, and then the soup will tell the comm to dismiss the class. And the commandant will tell the first captain to dismiss the class, and then they'll say class dismissed, and they'll all throw their hats up, and that's the end.
Is there a parade tomorrow?
There is a parade tomorrow. The alumni parade is tomorrow.
How's the weather looking?
So I actually haven't checked. I thought today was the biggest chance of rain, which you can tell at any second it looks like it could open up. I thought tomorrow looked okay, but I haven't checked recently. So there's a parade tomorrow morning, there's a parade Thursday morning, and there's a parade Friday morning.
Right. And each of those parades have a special purpose?
So tomorrow's parade is in honor of the returning alumni. Thursday's parade is an awards parade where the superintendent gives out awards by company. So all the cadets are out there. And then Friday's the actual graduation parade.
Got it.
Yeah.
Leadership in the Cal year, the junior year, PL 300, can you do my leadership book? So a lot of these on the bottom here are things that we did for leadership, and that was different, right? How do you go ahead and look at group dynamics and counseling, and how do you go ahead and show interactives and get it to be immersive? So now Rowan Technology and the departments do military history, military science, and the leadership course. By the way, when you're producing these, it's just electrons. So we limited the chapters to 8,000 words, but the endnotes, which have the links that you can go and do further study, are as long as the chapter. So a cadet can go ahead and say, hey, I'm really interested in this type of naval warfare, and go to the endnotes and go to somewhere and then link to a website or link to another primary source or something to go ahead and do that. So it expands their curiosity. Well, they have the curiosity, but their research into things. And when we first gave them this, I sat in about 50 classes to go ahead and see how they're using it. And me as a cadet, even though I was a starman, I thought they're going to be surfing the internet while they're doing this stuff. They're not going to be looking at the book. And I did not see one cadet doing that. I look back and I'd get up and I'd walk around, and they were going into those endnotes to go ahead and join into the discussion, and to go ahead and probably a lot of them to try to catch the instructor and see if he or she knew what was going on. But they were going into all those things, and I never saw any of them wander, and they always used it. The dean at the time, Brigadier General Trainer, said he couldn't believe he saw 2 cadets with their iPad discussing the battle in Grand Hall in the cafeteria line, showing what was happening. So it was a combination of great content from these authors and a great display. and to transform the way the cadets to go ahead and do work. And General Jeb, Cindy Jeb, and I have talked quite a bit about, can we go ahead and integrate classes together? So if you're talking about maybe Desert Storm and how Saddam Hussein had greater artillery, longer range artillery than us, maybe then that links to your chemistry class, right, with a link that talks about the chemical makeup of the propellant that goes in there. So now the cadets kind of tying all the classes together in his or her digital rucksack to go ahead and do that. So we mostly focus on West Point, but there's 30 other universities who are utilizing some of the stuff that we do. And again, it's all profit and profits with going to AOG to go ahead and help that out. So that's one of the ways that we do. I just want to make sure I hit everything. So the funny thing about it is we were asked, and I don't even know who it was, but as we all are old grads, I'm sure it was an old grad, that says, well, a lot of us don't even know how to turn on an iPad. You know, I'd love to go and get those 71 chapters in a book. So that's how this came about. Okay, that's how this came about. We went to we had to hire an agent. We hired an agent to take us to the major publishing companies, and we finally struck a deal with Simon & Schuster for four textbooks: the Civil War, the World War II, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and the American Revolution. And I would have loved to do all 71 chapters, but I cannot tell you how hard it is to take a digital book, an animated map, and what you have in here is you have snapshots of the animated maps. And it's a beautiful book, and the graphics are great, and it's written really well. But I would strongly urge you to go ahead and get a copy of the digital text, which I will make sure that you have you get a complimentary copy, because you're my favorite class. And so Steve has my email, and you can send me a link, your email, and say, hey Tony, I'd like to go ahead and receive a copy, and I'll go ahead and make sure that you have a link to go to do it, if that's what you want. But we wanted to give you these to go ahead and take a look and see how it is. So that's Rowan Technology, and that's how education has changed here. And we did that back in 2013, and it's just getting better and better here at the Academy. Fast forward 2016, the Joint Special Operations Commander was a 1983 graduate, and he's now commander of the forces in Afghanistan. General Scotty Miller came to us, and he understood what General Dawkins and I and the rest of the Virtu was doing, which was we trade in hundreds of exchanges in over 38 countries and 12,000 different financial instruments, and we make millions of trades a day, and we do the trades in milliseconds, and we get it right. And we ingest all that data, we analyze it, and we make a decision, and we get it right. If we didn't, we wouldn't be in business. And he said, that's great. He says, I need help in my community with data. And what's happened is the computing power has grown exponentially. The ability to go ahead and store data has become cheap. I shouldn't use the word cheap. That means piece of garbage. Inexpensive and vast. So we can have large amounts of data. We have the computing power to go ahead and work on it, and therefore that produced algorithms that are now more sophisticated to go into this data and study it, and then go ahead and do very quick analysis on it. And that's all artificial intelligence and machine learning is. It's utilizing vast amounts of data, and we're going to get a lot more when we go from 4G to 5G. It's kind of like putting another layer on the George Washington Bridge, maybe hanging another level on the bottom, right? We're just going to have so much more data around that's going to be available and fast and we have the computing power to go ahead and then take a look at it and analyze it. It's kind of like if I said, I think that Aaron Judge is the best outfielder in baseball, but I only looked at the American League East, right? And I did that analysis. Now you can look at every single player. If you have all the data, you can look at every single player, but it would be too much for a human to go ahead and go through. But a human writes the algorithm that tells the computer, go and look at all this data that you have and analyze it. So Scotty came to us and said, can you help us out? And this is the part of the acquisition. I spent it was during the time, end of my career, I was half a troop commander and half acquisition soldier. That was my secondary, so I bounced back and forth. So I know the acquisition process. 2016, he asked us to come and help him. We said, we'll do it for free. Of course, the lawyer says, you can't do that. The government doesn't take gifts, so we couldn't do that. So we had to form a company, so we formed the company Strideways. It took us 2 years to get a contract that we had to be a subcontractor to a prime, to a large defense industrial business. And we finally were able to go ahead and send we'll call them data scientists, but really software developers, engineers, and I was one of them. Into northern Iraq, and go ahead and sit next to the analyst who were getting all this data and try to apply these concepts. So what we found, though, was very different. So when they go in to go ahead and capture or kill a high-value target, they bring back a lot of captured enemy material. They bring back phones, they bring back hard drives, they bring back documents, they bring back everything. That information comes in that night, it'll come in, but then it takes weeks, if not months, to ingest that data. And then the op tempo, though, of the battle is extremely fast. They're going out every night, and they're going, and they're going, and they're going, and the data is lagging behind. So by the time the data comes in, so it's a data ingestion problem that we have now. And you couple that together with the fact that some of the data is unclassified, most of it is, then you have secret, and then you have top secret, and you can't pass data in between those without it being a chore. So it's very hard, again, back to the Aaron Judge problem, it's very hard to go ahead and look at all that data. So that we as an army, so these poor analysts are hand jamming all this data that's going in there. So we sat there just like we did back in 1998 when I was in Wall Street and said, hey, we can do that a lot faster. And we can go ahead and write some algorithms, and we can go ahead and scan that PDF and parse it and put it in there. And that's what we started to go ahead and do until ISIS, I'm going to use the quotes, surrendered. And really what they did was, and you can go to, this website's not bad, it's a little old. Let's see. Go to this website, the Institute for Study of War. Let's see where my cursor is. And they have a nice write-up on what happened in March when the forces, the SDF, the Kurds, finally cleaned out the last of the ISIS. Was the ISIS commanders grabbed their families, the people in their families, and said, go to the detention camps. Tell us how it is. Of course, the detention camps were in northern Syria. We were helping them in terms of, helping them out. They were getting medically treated. They were resting. They were doing things, and they overloaded them with like 55,000 families, ISIS families, inside these detention camps. And where they were only getting maybe a couple hundred a week, they started to get tens of thousands. So again, they were taking biometric data, but they were also getting a lot of handwritten things. And what our forces were concerned about was how are we going to keep track of them? There's such an overwhelming number that's coming in, and they are hardcore fighters. And by the way, one of the things that surprised me was that the women are more hardcore than the men in terms of their what they do and their belief in the ISIS caliphate. And so they are there to go ahead. When we say, oh, just an ISIS fighter, you know, an adult male, it's the women, and then of course they bring up their children that way. So now they're all in the camps, and even if people who are displaced civilians from Syria are also now being affected by it as well. So we said we have to go ahead and get track of these people, because this is going to be ISIS 3.0 once they get released, which the Kurds were releasing many of them back to their tribes, because the tribal elders were saying, hey, these are our people, we'll take care of them. And they didn't know where they were from, so we had to go ahead and find out what their home state, the home country was. So our data scientists went in and was able to go and extract the proprietary data from the biometrics, which has the fingerprints in the picture of the individual, and be able to go of the individual when they took them into the camp, and then take the handwritten notes and then marry all that together and create a website and a database that now they can go ahead and go in, and they're going to tag all of the people in the camps with RFID tags like we do in our American prisons, and then match them up. Once we're able to go ahead and do that, and he created that, and he did that in 4 days, which if we would have wrote a contract for it and went out for bid, it probably would have cost us, and it only cost us our TDY money to go over there, right? A plane trip and whatever they were feeding us every day, which was pretty good actually. And he did it in 4 days, and now they're able to go ahead and take every single person in the camp, redo their biometric data and match it up with their RFID tag, and take the picture. And by the way, if you think about facial recognition, there's a lot of things that you can go to do if the picture is taken right. And obviously the Kurds, as great as they are, and they love us, and they're great fighters, but they're taking a picture, and they got a picture of one guy, laying on his bed because he wouldn't get up, and they got and he's laying this way. But you have to have a full face. It's kind of like your 2-inch by 2-inch passport picture, right? You have to go ahead and then what we could go ahead and do, if you think about it, now we can take those pictures of the 70,000 people that are in there, match them up with the pictures we found on the phone. And if a certain high-value target is having a party with one of these people, you can go ahead and match them up and say, hey, wait a second, that person's in this particular detention camp. We know he or she's big buds with this person. That's a person of interest. Let's go ahead and grab that person and find them and do that. So that's what we wound up doing for the last probably about 2 or 3 weeks, and left that with them. Since we did that, we're able now, we now have 2 of our data scientists, at least 2, sitting with the units out there at least for the rest of the year and moving forward. And the multi-domain task force, who are trying out multi-domain operations in the U.S. Army Pacific, has asked us to come and work inside their TOCs to go ahead and see how we can go ahead and help fix that. Because if you think about the coordination of airspace when you have long-range fires and all these other things, these poor air defenders and field artillery and operational people inside the TOC are passing notes and emails and OneNotes and stuff like that to each other, and it's not coordinated. And we have to fix that because the op tempo of the battle is just going to be too fast to wait on the data. It's kind of like if I said to General Dawkins, sir, that market data from the European markets, I'll get it to you tomorrow. So you can trade on it tomorrow? That data is going to be old. The price and the quantity is going to be old. You need it now. You need it in milliseconds. That's the way we're going to need data to be ingested, analyzed, and disseminated. So it used to be F3. F3 stood for find, fix, and finish the enemy. Now it's find, fix, finish, extract, analyze, and disseminate, because of the information that we're going to go ahead and get. So that's what's going on. Our forces are fighting in over 140 countries, and the fight is far from over. The ideology is still spreading, and not only do we have to worry about that, we are worried about what's happening in the Ukraine and how that fight is going, and the tactics, techniques, and procedures that the Russians are using over there. It's just like what we all remember when we studied our military history, the Spanish Civil War, in which they're trying things out. And we are studying that and doing that, but we have to go ahead and learn from that. And of course, you all know what's happening in the South China Sea. So we have a lot on our plate, and it almost reminds me of what I started out with, which was the Engineers of Victory, and how do we win this war. And it's a great book on saying how we won World War II, utilizing the technical prowess of the United States to go and solve a lot of these problems. But we have to do the same thing. We have to fix some of the questions that the class of '69 was answering about talent management and getting the right people in there to go ahead and help. That finishes my portion of the briefing, but I'd like to open it up for questions. Yes, ma'am.
So we're talking about this facial recognition.
Yes,
of
ma'am.
Not prisoners, the people who are flooding into these camps.
Into these detention camps,
Right.
yes.
And what do we do with it? Once we've got facial recognition on them, do they leave the camps to support, to go back in, and we're following them? What's happening?
Well, what's happening is, first off, we want to get control, right?
Right.
We want to get control. Now, these camps are run by the Syrian Democratic Forces, not by Americans.
Okay.
Okay, because they're in Syria. And we're helping.
Okay.
Yes, advising.
Right.
And they are sympathetic to the tribes in Syria. So if a tribe in Syria say, I know that these 15 people came from my tribe, I want them back, I'll take care of them. They give them back. The Iraqis want their people back so they can go ahead and prosecute them. But you don't know where the Iraqis are until you've cataloged everybody. And you also are getting, if you think about it, you got fingerprints and you have the picture are really the only two things that you can rely on. If you say, where were you born, they can make up anything, right? And that's the information that they have now to go ahead and do that. So what we'd like to do once we get this, and if we get the right kind of pictures, we'd like to go ahead and take that facial recognition, the photos, and match them up with other stuff that we had from the previous 15 years. Yeah, we're starting already. Yes, ma'am. And then there are foreign fighters that are there that many countries don't want to take back. So we have to figure out what to do with those people. Right. Yes, sir.
Are you doing anything with regard to the situation on our on the border crisis, or anything with immigration?
That's a great question. What I also sit on the Army Science Board for battlefield uses of artificial intelligence, and the Army Science Board comes under the Deputy Undersecretary of the Army, Tom Kelly. He oversees it, and he supported us going to northern Iraq to go ahead and help. And when we briefed him, he wants us to go ahead and get in touch with the people on the border to see if the stuff that we did could be applicable to what they have as well, or what they're doing as well. So that's in the works. I don't know if anything's going to come out, because I found that every time I deal with a different government agency, it's a difficult bureaucratic system that we have to deal with, and different rules and regulations and things that go on. And that was the point I wanted to make. Our commanders, guys like Darrell Williams and Steve Glenn and Scotty Miller and Rich Clark, they are so intelligent, and they're visionaries, and they want to go ahead and do all these kind of things. we need to go ahead and fix our acquisition system in order to go ahead I'm, this is now public opinion, okay, my opinion. I don't think the nation even thinks about what's going on, that we're in 140 countries or any of that, so there's no pressure to go ahead and say, hey, let's fix this. In World War II, right, you grabbed anybody and you said, hey, you're really smart in cryptography, we're going to put you and break the Japanese code. And we grabbed a guy or a gal and we did that. Today, it takes me a year and a half to get anybody a clearance before they can even work on something. And it takes even longer to go ahead and get a contract. And when we were going for a contract, they said, why do you want to go ahead and give these guys a sole source contract? They're financial guys. They know nothing about the military. How can you need to go ahead and competitively bid that to the big defense industry? So it's a 19th century system that we have. Sir.
Wow.
How are you planning to use DNA?
Oh.
Planning to use it on the border?
Well, first off, I'm not planning to do any of that, right? I haven't heard anyone mention a use of DNA. Are you talking about with the ISIS?
Yes.
Yeah, I've not.
On American-Mexican border.
Oh, I don't know the answer to that, sir.
It's planning to use that to separate true families out.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Why not? But I think the first thing is, it's just
the same line as the intelligence.
Yes, sir. It's the same thing, though. I mean, the first thing is to just see what you got, right? Just catalog it first, and then you can go ahead and start doing the analysis. Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to make a picture.
Picture of your friend or whatever, and say this is Joe, and then it'll go through and it'll show you about 12 pictures that it thinks is Joe. About 12 pictures that it thinks is Joe, and then you train it. And you see, you have to train data, right? So you have to go ahead and train it, and you and you'll go ahead and say, yeah, no, this is Joe, this isn't Joe, and so on.
Getting ready to
and then you'll go
graduate.
get back and do it again. So